data back, and maybe that's with somebody else. It might still be in their name, but so that is another aspect of security what you would look at from a cloud perspective. Okay. So this is the securing 4, 5, or 6 screens in this thing, which is when you move back at the cloud when I look back at the example which of that company which I had where you said what do you secure? I mean, we have users for a X, which I will not name, but and they said obviously like I will use something more common. There's a guy from SAP who was speaking on one of these conferences sometime earlier, and he was talking about how they have these point of sale applications which have to be on mobile and have to run, and all the data is sitting on the cloud and coming back. Or even something as, I don't know if it's on the cloud, but does anyone know if this Neelakanni's thing is on the cloud?
It's not a cloud, but it needs to be cloud enabled for all the rest.
For those activities.
Our implementation itself is a very nailed down implementation specific to that.
Oh, so it's still a non-cloud application?
Non-cloud.
Okay, great. So if you were to imagine have that trouble of moving that onto a cloud, that's almost like this guy. I mean, you have all sorts of problems. You have government systems which are probably running RHEL 3 or whatever, I don't know if this is on RHEL 4 or God knows what, and all sorts of problems. You have some private, public, somebody wants something. And you have this Mars communication. That was doing my part.
We had this conversation with the Aadhaar team, right? They say the way they have designed their systems, they are operating at 80-90% utilization.
Amazing.
So they don't believe there's any advantage for us to move.
They're at 90% utilization in terms of CPU and capacity, or?
Their compute and their storage. So they've really built, in terms of value for money or the amount of information they're able, the amount of accesses they're able to service, for the cost that they're investing in the system, their OPEX and CAPEX is I don't know.
Amazing. Yeah, I personally think that's a.
They feel very proud of.
They feel proud.
They obviously have to become cloud enabled because to access that service for multiple cloud applications, they need to access them.
Okay, which means they might be sitting today somewhere there, but some of the services are sitting here, is what you're trying to say. Of course, I mean, on the lighter side, the reason they don't want to move to the cloud is because they take a lot of tax from our salary slips. So, don't tell that to Neelakanni. I think he's done a good job.
No, that will be more expensive. That's what they say.
Oh, there will be more steps to move to the cloud.
So they are 10x today of any other implementation in terms of efficiency.
Oh, then we should be scrapping these conferences and going back and saying, go back to enterprise.
No, but they for one application only, right? Flexibility is not.
So they can't scale up, scale down.
Yeah, so they can scale up the Aadhaar to handle more users and more accesses. But if you want to run video streaming on it or YouTube on it or something on the same infrastructure, it's not there. It's just customized to that one particular application kind of
mechanism.
Right.
That's great. So I love MAM because this is, I mean, the reason we have these conversations are because we need to learn from each other. I don't know more than you, or you don't know more than me, or maybe I know less than you, but this is the kind of person who makes it worthwhile to come to a conference and listen. So, thank you.
So I get an apple or
We'll make up our mind. I know you're. So last is in terms of how many screens do you have? We talked about the mobile, so we're good. So what we protect. Obviously, this again I will skip because we had somebody speak so much about mobile, so you really know what is in there. So you have to have the apps, you have to have the WAP, you have to have antiviruses, you have to scanning, you have to have credential management, and secure roaming users. So in conclusion, obviously cloud security is critical to succeed. Identity privilege, compliance, have multi-device solutions. Use strong authentication, consider big data, mobile is the future. And we finally get to the apple and the guava. Okay, so why should we be afraid of this QR code? I have 3 minutes and then I have to run to ECL for a 3 o'clock meeting. So 5 minutes or maybe 10 minutes. Sorry? sensitive personal information. You're afraid that the QR code might catch that. Okay. Anything else?
Modern web is not secure.
Yeah, it's obviously not secure. That's quite obvious. I was actually looking for a very unique application of the QR code which I read some time back. I'll give you a clue. The clue comes that if you put that QR code on one of your T-shirts, you could potentially harm a lot of people. Assuming that I do something which is primarily cloud-based. Sorry, somebody will pick that data. What will pick the data? A mobile can pick that data. Basically, a device can pick that data. Okay, a device can pick the data. What kind of devices? Mobiles? What other devices could be there? Getting closer. Self-driving cars. This guy deserves one Guava man anyway. See, I do well. Okay, you did catch. Okay, we still have an Apple. Self-driving cars. So essentially, devices, lots of devices. The specific device that I'm looking for is
Sensors or scanners?
Is this? Wait, okay, let's not say Google Glass, let's say a wearable technology. So there's an actual, so this picture is, while it's not malicious, so you can safely scan it, it's just a link to a Wikipedia link, okay? There is an example of something called as photo bombing. You've heard. So there's an example of saying that where if you could look at, they proved that when they first launched the wearable devices, which are primarily cloud-based, there is nothing in Google, there is just, I mean, if you programmed on it, we tried a prototype, it's just a set of cards. You move that and you get card 1, card 2, it says OK glass and you can do swipe. I actually hold a patent on it, but I will not tell you what's in it. It's still at USB, but not on Google Glass, on an algorithm. But anyway, so they showed that this photo bombing, they proved that in the early wearable devices, if you wore a malicious QR code and stood in the background of an audience, and Google apparently that particular wearable device was not authenticating and was taking that information in. So that's why he got the Guava, because fundamentally it was trying to fish. It was able to read that and then through certain mechanisms take control of your glass and therefore get to the cloud and do all sorts of things. So the next set of threats that are coming to you are kind of almost untrue. Then the reason I found it very interesting was because it does not require an action from you in some cases. You have to click a mail, you have to open a mail, you have to do something, and that is there, right? I mean, you have to open a website and you have a browser plugin logging out. So I found that to be a very interesting example of why a Guava needs to be given out, but that's a very nice security threat for a cloud-like application. Now, I shall walk down and actually give this apple to Ma'am because she is amazing. You should talk to her about other. I think I had more time I would talk to her, but fundamentally that's there. So then, now, why did I put that or up? Is the question. I may not need the or at all, but I'm thinking whether I need an extra minute or not. So, how many people want to give me sing? Yeah, this is good. We are in Lok Sabha. Shall we have one more state out of Karnataka? Yes, no? Everybody says no, raise your hands. Okay, now replace that question. Shall we have me sing? Okay, I shall not sing in that case. Okay, thank you very much. Remember the apple, remember the guava. Sorry? Yeah, tell.
The title says cloud is as secure as you want it to be, right? Any objective answers on why do we say it so?
Why do we say it so?
Clearly saying, okay, these are the reasons why we...
Into your cloud, you will be as secure as you want it to be.
So it doesn't mean that there is any standard or anything, but just what you're doing in-house is what has to be ported to the cloud.
There is a standard. So if you go back to CSA, it gives you a certain set of clouds in terms of Cloud Security Alliance. There's a particular set which you need to apply. So if you're looking for that, yes, the standard is that. If you're looking for a healthcare, you have to apply HIPAA. If you're looking for a critical application, you need to be ISO 27001. So those standards need to be adhered to. Specifically, I would recommend you go and look up CSA.
So for an application to say it is compliant to a cloud, is there a standard saying?
You have to define what cloud means, of course, private, public,
Whatever
hybrid.
it is, right?
Is there a standard?
Consider I say I want to deploy it on a public cloud. Is there a standard that says XYZ should be done so that my application is compliant?
I would ask you to go look up CSA. CSA gives you all those.
Right?
CSA gives you all those list of clouds. Yes. Those give you exact specifics of what needs to be done in order to a cloud. However, you would also need to look at your contracting, because in terms of contracting, for an application to be cloud specific, you may have certain rules. Like I said, depends on whether you're going to a healthcare division or your mission critical application or a government application. Or for example, if you were selling in Europe, like I said, EU has a rule that you can't send the data. Or if you were, the Patriots Act in US has certain rules. There are financial banks which have, I forgot the name, but I think Sarbanes-Oxley is one of the rules that you may have to apply whether you're cloud or not. But so you would have to have those kind of sets which you need to do. Does that help?
Question. So are there any SLAs and benchmarking related to cloud related to security? Because I'm a person who's used to who's very afraid of losing security if he moves to either a private cloud or public cloud, right? If I'm a service provider and I want to convince such a client, is there a way that I can benchmark his current environment and then put it in a cloud environment and again run those same tests and show him that okay, you are equally secure because I have done blah blah blah. Right? So is there such?
It's a kind of combination of his question too. But if I really look at what you're looking for is to give equal or more security, not definitely less security. So the best way to do equal security is to define what your current security protocols are. How does for example, it could start from as simple as what your identity management is. Because the cloud, in the end, you're talking about identity, right? Talking about identity, authentication, authorization, you would have rules for that. So in that sense, if I went back to that context of that figure, do you have identity management in place? Do you have privileged user management in place? What kind of encryption key size are you using? What's your BCP? That kind of rules which are there. That's your today's enterprise, right? When you move that to the cloud, what you're essentially doing is moving some of the responsibility from yourself to somebody else. And that's where your SLAs and contracts come in place in terms of saying whether they're secure. The second part is the question he asked about CSA. How do I know whether my application is going to happen? So you secure your application by looking at CSA. They have a list of questionnaire which you need to answer to.
You can't really run a series of tests or
I had once seen
there's only compliance.
it's compliance and that kind of thing. So it's not like a tool which tells you are now cloud compliant. But I had once seen a tool from a particular company. I will not name that company because I'm not sponsoring it, but where you could actually answer a set of questions and it tells you whether your set is now cloud compliant or not. I believe it was Microsoft or not. I've seen that. So you could just go through a set of, it was almost like a WYSIWYG kind of editors which tells you whether you are cloud compliant at the end of it.
Or whether your application is cloud.
Whether your application is cloud.
Okay. So, but the basic question is, I am used to a certain environment, which I am comfortable with in terms of security. I am moving to a new environment, which they say you do this, but there is no proof. What is proving that this environment, by doing extra, is making it as secure as the one that I was used to?
I think that's where your contracts and SLA. So to me, sorry for making it a little trivial, but to me this example is as simple as whether you store your money in your home or in your bank. In your bank. So I'm trivializing the example, but we could choose to take all our money and keep it in our home, or we give it to ICICI Bank or State Bank. Government has put in a set of rules which says that those banks won't fail, and up to 1 lakh rupees we are guaranteed. 1 lakh, yes. But in a sense, if you think from cloud from that example, it is no different from that sense. It is just a matter of trust. In 1750, probably the banks were less trusted. Today, the cloud is less trusted because you don't understand all these mechanisms, like Ma'am was saying. But fundamentally, it's a set of rules which CSA gives you. It's an SLA which comes through contracts. It's a login and authentication which you have for your SaaS-based application or the data which you put in your PaaS. In 2055, when we are having Unicom 2055, the conversation will be completely different, but it's a matter of gaining that trust. The whole philosophy of showing you all this is to tell you that there are methods to gain that trust.
Thank you. So we have the others all having the session on Internet of the Things by Bikram Barman from Senior Manager Yahoo. And here we'll have Pamela Kumar. She'll be talking on cloud computing standards and interoperability landscape and its positions at Texas Instruments, where she was the director of cellular systems software, and she was a key leader in creation of a $2.5 billion business around single chip. Pamela brings with her an experience of 28 plus years in the semiconductor, computers, and communication industry. She holds 3 patents in the area of networking accelerators, and she has completed her executive program in management in the Indian Institute of Management, Bangalore. I have cut short the whole thing, but captured the essence, ma'am. So over to you.
Thank you.
Okay. So I said let's start with something interesting. Perceptions on cloud, right? So the first one is these aliens who landed on this planet called Earth. And what are they saying? They don't see anybody there. Why? Because everybody, in 2012, everybody decided to move to the cloud. What are you guys doing here? It's 2014 now. Okay. So how do you choose a cloud service provider? That was the question I was asking Debashis here. There's no easy, well-defined rules, right? You just throw a dart and choose which one. It's as simple as that. There's no easy way to SLA, to prove that this is better than that in terms of the SLAs that are important to you. Okay, and that's why we need standards and interoperability, benchmarking, certification. All those things have not happened in this domain yet. The other one is about access, right? So if access, we were talking about mobility and all, was happening the way it should. So you could do things like moving all your memory to the cloud. As using mobile phones, now we've stopped remembering numbers. Somehow that memory has moved to the cloud. or to the mobile handset, right? And when you're storing your contacts in the cloud, so a lot of stuff you used to store here is now getting into the cloud. Because you have the confidence and trust that you can access it when you want it. So access is a very important part of making cloud happen. And then so we talked about freemium in the morning. So when you make that transition from free to premium, what happens in between? You go through a disaster. That's what the last one talks about. When the free storage is over, what will happen? Will all my data just get lost somewhere? It will just drop down to the earth. So that's the last cartoon. So what I'll try to address, the standards landscape in cloud is so complex today that doing justice to it in 40 minutes is not possible. Okay. So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to go through why standard, what's happening, how is it happening, and then come to the Indian scenario and what's unique about what's happening in India today. So, but I will choose examples to go a little bit deeper rather than doing a broad brush. So why do we need standards? What is the impact that standards can have? And the analogy here I'm trying to draw is with the internet world. Before internet happened, and a lot of you were probably not born or maybe not still in kindergarten or something. But I was definitely doing my job. I was doing my first job in this era, when there was no email. Right? There wasn't even email within the company. Okay? Within the company you could send mails. So you had these proprietary email providers. So you signed up with a America Online or a Prodigy or a AT&T WorldNet or a CompuServe, and you got your email service as per what you could, whatever you signed up. So within your department or within your company or within your neighborhood or whatever, right? And gradually they started getting into deals where people who signed up and so on can also access from the other guy. Then what happened? The IETF happened, right? IETF, which was a bunch of technical people who saw the potential of connecting all these networks. The technology was ready to provide an internet, but the businesses were not ready because it cannibalized them. So the IETF is what created these protocols, did the experimentation. The first thing that IETF did was interoperability. It got people to bring different applications, different networking equipment and interoperate it, and then build a solution so that they could become, and then define the RFCs that were brought in, converged into the standards. So when internet happened, the proprietary guys had to become compliant with the standard because the standards were defined, and the clients started demanding that compatibility, right? And lo and behold, the entire business model changed, the whole business landscape changed. A lot more players, there was rapid and open innovation. So from the proprietary world, you went into an open world where there were a lot more players, a lot more innovation, and that's what we see today. So that's the role, in this space, standards and interoperability can play. And where are we with cloud today? Cloud is in that America Online and CompuServe era, right? You have the Google, you have the Amazon, you have the IBM, and you have the Microsoft. And each one has their own standards, their own APIs, and you can sign to one or the other. They do not interoperate, and they do not have a reason to interoperate. They do not have the incentive to interoperate. So they are not going to make it open. It's the technologists like you and me who see the possibility of what can happen on cloud, and that's what we've talked about all day long. That if we make this open, the possibilities are huge. The kind of innovation, the kind of application, the kind of impact it can have to our lives is phenomenal. But these monoliths are not going to allow that. There are some attempts going on to create such, so to emulate what happened in the internet world. They call it the intercloud. Okay, the term intercloud is picking up. There are standards getting defined. There's a lot of work happening in that space. But it's early days. There's no certification process in place yet. Now let's look at what really is happening in the standardization and interoperability space globally. So here is that diagram. So if you look in the background, there is the cloud stack, the cloud architecture stack, and there's different bodies, so the green ones are the global bodies, and the US bodies, and the European bodies, and the Korean, and the Japanese. In the infrastructure as a service space, a lot of standardization has happened and matured. In the PaaS and SaaS space, it's kind of happening. Security, a lot of stuff happening in security. And cloud management. Then intercloud. In the intercloud space, which I referred to earlier, there's a lot of standardization, and different bodies are coming up with different perspectives. And a lot of what is happening there is actually interoperability. Interoperability test beds are being put together, and they're trying to work out standards. Then obviously the framework, the definition of cloud, the use cases, those are getting defined by multiple bodies. This is an IBM view of the same world. This is definitely biased by where IBM is participating. So IBM as a company, necessarily to play in the cloud space, they were a laggard. They were not a Google or an Amazon. They woke up to cloud late. And to make an entry, they did it, tried to do it the open way, which was a very non-IBM traditionally. Traditionally, IBM was not embracing open, right? And if you look at their earlier products. But in this case, they have tried to go the open way. And in order to achieve that, they have some of these forums they have created, like the CCRA architecture is essentially the IBM cloud architecture, and the open group, that group was essentially driven by them. But they have had to come into that environment where 70-80 companies are signing up into these forums, working together to publish these standards. Right? That's the only way you can play in this market, in this space. The development of standards and interoperability is going hand in hand with the research and innovation that is happening to make cloud happen. It's a very different ball game from the traditional standards and interoperability. It's very interesting, it's not boring. It's actually where all the innovation is happening. All the fun is really happening in the standards and the interoperability space. This is the NIST reference architecture. So in 2008, 2009, I actually visited, being inside of IBM, I was in the Systems and Technology Lab, okay? And I remember I had gone to Alberton Research where they have the service sciences base. And I was talking to the director there and I was saying, what about cloud? And she said, cloud is not for companies like IBM. In STG, cloud was a bad word. In research, cloud was a bad word. Marketing had started talking about it. Services was beginning to talk a little bit more seriously about it. Right, the first cloud offering had just happened. And why was that? Because Vivek Kundra, anybody knows Vivek Kundra? Who is he? He was the CIO of Obama's campaign. And then he became the CIO at the White House. And he brought people to, he created that cloud first policy for the government, for the US government. He got the technical people together through NIST and they defined the cloud definition. The first cloud definition came out, the cloud architecture came out. Now that government was doing that, all the companies woke up and said we need to have cloud. So IBM set up a CTO office for cloud. IBM fellows picked up from all over and a group was formed and suddenly they had a whole strategy on cloud participation. Now Ginny Rometty is investing $4 billion in data centers. Instead of spending $4 billion on the fab, she's ready to sell the fab, but she wants to put $4 billion on creating data centers in the world, Brazil and India and all the places, right? So that's what is happening, right? So that's the kind of role that NIST has played. Now, some of the definitions that NIST had, like the biggest controversies on the cloud broker. So NIST defined that these will be the kind of entities that will emerge for cloud to happen. They will be the carriers, the service providers, the consumers, the auditors, and the brokers. But the brokers and the auditors have not really picked up as an entity to be a viable business yet. Okay? This is a CCRA, the IBM Cloud Computing Reference Architecture. Okay, this is the basis of this CSCC, the Cloud, what is it called, Customer Council. Okay, so you essentially the same thing, service integration. You have the consumers, you have the providers, and in the differences in the details. They talk about OSS BSS approach. Then of course the infrastructure platform and software as a service. IBM has also defined business process as a service, an additional service. Okay, which I don't know how many of you have heard about this company, ITsoft. Have you heard about ITsoft? Right? They are taking business processes to a different domain. Right? So this is